In the year 2447, humanity had risen from the ashes of its fractured past and into the stars, mastering faster than light travel and spreading its influence across the Milky Way. Earth, once divided into nations that warred for control over resources, was now united under a single banner, the Unified Earth Government, UG. The technological marvels that enabled space travel were also tools for peace, at least, that's what humanity had hoped. The Galactic Council, a collective of advanced alien species, had long watched Earth with mild curiosity. They considered humanity primitive and volatile, a species on the verge of self-destruction. But something about humanity intrigued them, a unique combination of resourcefulness, adaptability, and raw determination that they had never seen before. Then the Vornak came. The Vornak were an ancient species, vast in size and intellect. Their empires spanned thousands of systems, their ships as large as moons, and their fleets were led by commanders who had honed their craft over millennia. When they first arrived in the Milky Way, they believed they would easily subjugate humanity, like they had done with so many species before. The first battle took place near Jupiter's orbit. The Vornak, in their arrogance, underestimated humanity's willingness to sacrifice. As their massive fleet of warships arrived, humanity's ragtag defense forces, including experimental fighters and homemade technology, launched an audacious assault. The battle was chaotic, the Vornak fleet initially laughing at the tiny human vessels, but something unexpected happened. In the heat of battle, humans fought in ways the Vornak could not predict. They used unconventional tactics, feigned retreats, created false signals, and made use of terrain things the Vornak had never encountered. In the end, the Vornak lost 3 ships and withdrew. They called it a fluke, but humanity had tasted victory. And the galaxy took note. Chapter 2: The Nature of Humanity. The Vornak were just the first to learn the hard truth. Humanity wasn't just another species to be conquered. It was a force of nature. Humans weren't the strongest, the most biologically suited for space, or the most advanced in terms of pure technology. But they were the most adaptable. Over the centuries, humans had faced extinction numerous times, the ravages of climate change, nuclear war, and disease. Yet each time, they had rebuilt. Each time, they had found new ways to survive. When pushed to the brink, humanity didn't cower, it innovated. It adapted. But it was more than just survival instincts. Humanity had a deep and primal drive to protect what it loved. Their wars, while destructive, were often driven by a desire to secure a future for their children, their families, their civilizations. This drive, this unyielding force, had made them fierce competitors in the galactic community. The Galactic Council initially tried to dismiss humanity's aggressive tendencies as short-lived, an evolutionary blip that would pass. They were wrong. Humanity's ability to form bonds, to work together for a cause greater than oneself, gave them an edge no other species could match. The humans were a fractious, divided species, but when they united, the results were devastating. Chapter 3: The Dark Path. As humanity's presence in the galaxy grew, so too did the alliances they formed. They encountered species both peaceful and hostile, and while many tried to broker alliances, humanity's methods were often aggressive. They had made enemies. The Zra, an insect race, were the first to attempt a large-scale invasion of human space. It was a massive coordinated effort, with Zra ships numbering in the thousands, their biological warfare techniques unmatched in their efficiency. They believed humanity's inability to handle biological threats would cripple them. What the Zra didn't realize was that humanity's entire history had been marked by overcoming biological warfare. They had faced diseases that wiped out entire generations. And they had always found a way to fight back. The humans did not just develop countermeasures, they devised biological countermeasures to counteract the countermeasures. The Zra never stood a chance. They tried a second assault, but it was stopped before it even reached the human borders. Humanity's willingness to sacrifice a portion of its population, if necessary, to ensure the survival of the species made them terrifying. Every battle, every skirmish, honed them further. In the deep, cold corridors of galactic diplomacy, where politics took precedence over survival, humanity began to be seen as a force that could not be ignored. A species that would stop at nothing to preserve its future. Chapter 4: The Rise of the War Machines. Over time, humanity's military became a true force to be reckoned with. The first wave of human ships were crude, patchwork designs cobbled together from older technology. But as humanity's understanding of alien technology grew, so did their capabilities. Humanity began designing and building warships that were unparalleled in their efficiency and brutality. The flagship of the human fleet, the USS Templar, was a ship of unimaginable power. Its massive cannons could obliterate planets if they were charged with enough energy. Yet, it wasn't just the weapons that made humanity's ships terrifying, it was their flexibility. Every ship could be adapted, modified, and outfitted for different tactics in real time. The Templar could fight in 1,000 ways. One moment, it was a fortress, with shields so strong it could deflect the most advanced alien lasers. The next, it could turn into a razor-sharp instrument of destruction, tearing apart an enemy fleet with its agile fighter drones. It wasn't just about firepower. Humanity's true weapon was its adaptability. When other species fought in predictable, rigid formations, humans innovated on the fly. They would attack in unexpected ways, using distractions, traps, and false moves to lure enemies into deadly traps. By the time the Templar had decimated an entire Vornak invasion fleet in the span of 3 days, humanity's reputation as the most terrifying warrior species in the galaxy was cemented. Chapter 5: The Price of War. But with great power came great responsibility and the inevitable costs. War ravaged humanity as it did with every other species. The toll on the human psyche, the loss of life, and the wreckage left in the wake of battle was undeniable. Yet, humanity had become something unique. In war, they forged bonds deeper than any other species. In loss, they found the strength to rebuild. Perhaps the most terrifying aspect of humanity's ability to wage war was that it could do so endlessly. They could wage war without losing heart, without breaking their spirits. Each battle, each victory, made them stronger. Where other species had long given up on the fight, humans would adapt. They would continue. Chapter 6: The Final Confrontation. The moment that solidified humanity's dominance came in 2473, during the Battle of the Black Nebula. The Zra, believing they had the upper hand, launched a surprise attack on Earth itself. Their fleet of over 10,000 ships, led by their most powerful bio-engineered warlord, sought to annihilate humanity once and for all. What the Zra failed to account for was humanity's ability to recover from even the most crushing defeats. The battle saw humanity's most advanced ships, their experimental war machines, engage in combat with the Zra fleet. As the battle raged on, humanity's determination and refusal to accept defeat became apparent. Every setback was met with an even greater response. Humans fought with the ferocity of a species that knew it could be wiped out but refused to go down without a fight. The Zra, for all their technological superiority, began to crumble. They underestimated one simple truth: humans fought not just for survival, but for vengeance, for justice, and for the future. By the end of the battle, the Zra fleet was shattered, and their warlord lay dead. Humanity had won, not because they were the most powerful or the most advanced, but because they would never surrender. They had shown the galaxy what it truly meant to fight. Chapter 7: The Path of Shadows. While humanity's reputation as the galaxy's most terrifying warrior species spread, the fear they instilled in others was not the only consequence of their actions. As humanity's empire expanded, they faced challenges from within. The unified Earth government, which had once been a symbol of unity, now found itself torn between different factions. The idea of perpetual warfare began to take its toll on Earth's society. Some began to question whether the constant need for military supremacy had robbed humanity of its soul. Was this the path to eternal survival, or had they become what they feared most, the very monsters they fought? While the government worked to placate these growing voices of dissent, certain factions within humanity began to embrace a darker path, one that sought power at any cost. The Black Dawn, a rogue group of military elites and industrial magnates, saw the endless cycle of war not as a necessity but as a means to an end. They believed that the galaxy should be ruled by humanity alone. This faction saw the galaxy as a playground, where the strong ruled and the weak perished. The Black Dawn, using their vast resources, began conducting experiments with forbidden technologies, genetic manipulation, bioengineering, and even dark energy weapons. These new weapons of mass destruction were designed not only to kill but to reshape entire planets. Humanity's worst fear, its own monstrous creations, began to take shape. This shadowy group would eventually lead humanity down a dangerous path, as factions of humans began fighting each other, threatening to splinter the species into warring states, each with its own vision for the future. As the war between humanity's factions escalated, the galaxy watched in horror, knowing that a new kind of terror had been unleashed, one that was even more unpredictable and brutal than the previous interstellar battles. Chapter 8: The Dark Legacy of the Black Dawn. As the Black Dawn grew in power, their influence spread through the fringes of humanity's empire. They had perfected new forms of warfare that manipulated the very laws of physics. Black hole cannons, weapons capable of collapsing entire star systems, were now at their disposal. With these terrifying tools, the Black Dawn began their campaign to break free from the control of the unified Earth government and impose their will on the galaxy. However, their actions did not go unnoticed. The Galactic Council, fearing that humanity's internal strife would spill into the larger galaxy, convened an emergency summit. Representatives from every major species gathered to address the growing threat. The Zra, still reeling from their defeat at Earth's hands, took the opportunity to push for an aggressive preemptive strike on the humans, hoping to crush them once and for all. However, other species, such as the peaceful Zelenar, urged caution, seeing that the Black Dawn's rise could trigger a civil war among humans themselves. The Council's response was swift, a collective military response aimed at halting the Black Dawn's rise before they could destabilize the galaxy. But humanity's war machines, now imbued with advanced alien technology, proved difficult to counter. The Black Dawn was not only fighting against the unified Earth government, but against the galaxy itself. The battle between the Galactic Council and the Black Dawn raged across hundreds of systems, with humanity caught in the middle. Earth became a battleground, its surface scarred by the conflict. Millions died as human factions turned against each other, using devastating weapons designed to wipe out entire continents. The cost of war reached unprecedented levels, and yet neither side was willing to surrender. Chapter 9: The Collapse of the Galactic Order. The war between the Black Dawn and the unified Earth government took a catastrophic toll on the galaxy's infrastructure. Entire star systems were decimated, and once verdant worlds were left barren, as humanity's weapons ravaged everything in their path. The war itself became a race to harness new forms of technology before the other side could. In an effort to gain an upper hand, the Black Dawn initiated the creation of the Quantum Nexus, a device capable of opening wormholes to alternate dimensions. This experimental technology, if successful, could reshape the fabric of space-time itself, allowing the Black Dawn to access infinite power and resources. However, the dangers of tampering with such forces were unknown. On the other side, the unified Earth government, desperate to maintain its dominance, began to arm itself with weapons that could annihilate entire species, not just fleets of ships, but whole civilizations. Humanity's internal conflicts were on the brink of dragging everyone into an apocalyptic spiral. It wasn't just the humans who feared what was happening, the other species of the galaxy began to see the unraveling of the galaxy's order. The Zra, once too proud to submit to human leadership, had now become humanity's most reluctant ally, willing to fight against the existential threat posed by the Black Dawn. Yet, their alliances with humanity were shaky at best, and the Zra feared that if the humans continued down this path, there would be no victory, only mutual destruction. The once formidable Galactic Council, which had held sway over countless species, began to fracture. The center of galactic power had shifted, and no one knew who would come out victorious in the coming battle. Chapter 10: The Silence Before the Storm. After years of constant warfare, the galaxy fell into an eerie silence. No one knew who held the upper hand in the conflict between the Black Dawn and the unified Earth government. The human empire was in tatters, torn apart by civil war. Millions had died, and the galaxy was beginning to realize that humanity's terror wasn't just about their military prowess, it was about their ability to destroy everything in their path. The leaders of the Galactic Council were desperate for peace, but they knew that the galaxy could never go back to what it had been before. The Black Dawn's ambitions had irrevocably changed the balance of power. The unified Earth government, while still holding power over some systems, was crumbling under the weight of its own internal strife. There was only one option left for those who wanted peace: confront the threat that was humanity itself. A final attempt was made to stop the destruction. The Zelenar, the most peaceful and technologically advanced of the galaxy's species, reached out to humanity's leaders in a final effort to broker peace. They proposed a radical idea: an interspecies council with equal representation, where no one species would dominate, but all could coexist. It would be a new order for the galaxy, one founded on cooperation rather than domination. But even as the talks began, a dark truth lingered in the minds of all who participated. Humanity had learned the art of war so well that peace seemed an impossible feat. The battle to reshape the galaxy was no longer about survival, it was about dominance. Who would lead the galaxy into the future, and who would be left in the dust? Chapter 11: The End of the Beginning. The final confrontation between humanity and the Galactic Council was fought on the broken world of Drolis, a former agricultural hub now reduced to rubble. The unified Earth government, allied with the remnants of the Zra and other species who had witnessed the rise of humanity's power, had cornered the Black Dawn forces. But as the battle began, humanity realized something they hadn't anticipated: their true strength was no longer in their weapons or their war machines, but in their capacity to evolve. The war between human factions had forced them to confront their most fundamental question: what kind of species would they become? Humanity was faced with a choice: continue on the path of destruction, where every victory meant more bloodshed, or forge a new way, one that would require them to reconcile their warrior instincts with their need for peace. In a shocking turn of events, the leader of the unified Earth government, President Ariella Cross, called for a ceasefire. "We have fought for so long because we feared extinction. But we are not our past. We must evolve," she declared. "The galaxy does not fear us because of our strength, it fears us because we refuse to give up. Now we must choose. We must evolve or die as conquerors." The battle ceased, and the galaxy held its breath as humanity, finally united, stepped into a new role, not just as conquerors, but as the stewards of peace, bearing the knowledge of their past mistakes. Chapter 12: The Rebirth of Humanity. After years of rebuilding and re-evaluating their place in the galaxy, humanity embarked on a journey of renewal. The devastation of war, the destruction of ecosystems, and the betrayal within their ranks were scars that could never fully fade. But the collective will to overcome remained stronger than ever. President Ariella Cross, now recognized as a visionary leader, spearheaded a global initiative known as the Rebirth Protocol. This effort was a multifaceted endeavor to heal the fractured human society. It wasn't just about technology or military prowess, but about returning to the core values that had once made humanity great: compassion, ingenuity, and unity. Cross knew that, in order for humanity to earn the respect of the galaxy and avoid the path that had nearly led them to extinction, they needed to prove their commitment to peace. The Rebirth Protocol focused on a radical idea: a universal exchange of knowledge and technology with the other species of the galaxy, creating a new era of cooperation. Rather than fighting over resources or power, humanity sought to share their innovations in energy, medicine, and agriculture. As part of the initiative, Earth began sending its best and brightest scientists, diplomats, and engineers to neighboring worlds to teach, learn, and collaborate. Humans were no longer conquerors, they were students and teachers in equal measure. And while many in the galaxy remained wary, there were a few who stood by humanity. The Zra, once humanity's most bitter enemies, now found common cause with humans in rebuilding what had been destroyed. Together, the two species began to develop new methods of war prevention, massive, planet-wide shields, advanced medical practices to cure the genetically engineered diseases of their past wars, and biosustaining technologies that could save dying planets. The question remained, would humanity ever fully abandon its warlike past, or would the temptation of power always be too strong? The rebirth protocol was humanity's gamble, a hope that the next generation of humans would know a different way of life, one that didn't rely on domination, but on diplomacy and mutual respect. Chapter 13: The Echo of the Fallen. However, not all agreed with the peaceful vision that humanity now championed. Some of the old warrior factions that had once risen to prominence in the early days of humanity's rise to power were far from content with the new direction. For them, peace meant weakness, and their very survival depended on humanity asserting dominance over the galaxy once again. A rogue faction known as the Children of the Ancients began to spread propaganda across human colonies and military strongholds. This group of extremists, mostly veterans of the Black Dawn conflicts and military officers who had lost their influence during the reforms, saw the idea of peace as an existential threat. They believed that the galaxy had never truly respected humanity, and it was only through strength that humanity could ensure its place as the galaxy's true rulers. Under the leadership of General Soren Valek, a former war hero whose name was once feared across the galaxy, the Children of the Ancients began to rally support. They didn't want war for war's sake, but rather, they believed humanity's greatest strength lay in total domination. They called for humanity to take its place at the head of the galactic order, subjugating weaker species to preserve their own survival. As the Children's influence grew, small but deadly skirmishes broke out along human borders, and many began to fear that the uneasy peace humanity had built with the galaxy was about to unravel. Even the Zra, with whom humanity had once allied, began to question whether the new human leadership could be trusted. Their fears were compounded by reports of human military outposts preparing for conflict once again. Chapter 14: The Return of the Warrior Spirit. The Children of the Ancients' insurrection quickly gained traction, leading to internal conflicts within human space. President Ariella Cross, despite her previous attempts to avoid military intervention, found herself once again facing the very forces she had hoped to prevent. The Children of the Ancients attacked human supply lines, destabilized neutral colonies, and eventually declared open rebellion. This was no longer a political matter, this was an ideological war for the soul of humanity itself. Cross had to make a difficult decision. She was committed to peace, but at what cost? If she allowed the Children of the Ancients to tear apart everything humanity had worked for, the galaxy would see humanity as nothing more than another warmongering species, incapable of change. But if she attempted to crush the insurrection with force, she risked the very thing she had fought so hard to prevent, the return of humanity's warlike nature. The Galactic Council, while sympathetic to Cross, could not remain neutral. The Zra, fearful that humanity might return to their old ways, began to gather forces near human borders, preparing for a potential intervention. The Zelenar, the peaceful race that had once offered a path to a brighter future, also grew concerned and sent their emissaries to Earth to offer mediation. But General Valek was a leader like none other. His understanding of human nature, of the raw power of the warrior spirit, allowed him to rally a vast following. His supporters believed he was the only one capable of leading humanity back to its rightful place at the top of the galactic hierarchy. Soon, the Children of the Ancients began to employ the very tactics humanity had once used against their enemies: surprise attacks, psychological warfare, and high-tech guerrilla strategies that left the galaxy's forces scrambling to contain them. These new, ruthless warriors emerged from the shadows, challenging the very foundation of the rebirth protocol. Cross knew she had little time before the insurrection would consume humanity entirely. She called upon her closest advisors, including her military commanders, diplomatic envoys, and former enemies who had once been a part of the coalition that brought about humanity's resurgence. Together, they devised a plan, humanity would have to fight to preserve peace not through military might, but through a final act of diplomacy. Chapter 15: The Trial of the Ancients. With the galaxy's fragile peace teetering on the brink of collapse, President Cross made one last appeal to humanity's ideals. She called for a galactic summit on the neutral world of Mizar, a planet with no ties to any species or faction. Here, representatives of the children of the ancients, the unified Earth government, and the galactic powers would meet to settle their differences once and for all. Cross's speech on the eve of the summit echoed across the universe. We are not the war machines we once were. We are not defined by our past, but by what we choose to become. I ask for no more battles, no more bloodshed. Let this be the final trial of our species. We will decide whether we are worthy of the future we seek. The summit was a tense affair. The children of the ancients refused to back down, arguing that humanity had no place in the galaxy unless it was at the top, ruling all others. General Volek, who had once led humanity's forces with great honor, now saw himself as the only one capable of restoring order to the galaxy through the imposition of force. Yet Cross, backed by the diplomatic corps of the galaxy and many of humanity's allies, made her case clear: humanity had the potential to be both powerful and peaceful. The question was whether it could control the urges that had driven it to war so many times before. Could they choose peace, or would they once again choose to dominate? The Council, watching from the sidelines, gave humanity one last chance to prove they had evolved. This summit, this trial, would determine the fate of humanity and its place in the galactic order. Would they remain the terrifying warriors the galaxy feared, or would they evolve into something greater? Chapter 16: The Legacy of Humanity. The summit ended without violence, but not without consequence. President Cross, with the support of her allies, had successfully negotiated a path forward, albeit one fraught with uncertainty. The children of the ancients, realizing their war for dominance was no longer sustainable, were forced to agree to a ceasefire and a peace accord, albeit with some of their demands met. Humanity's place in the galaxy was now defined not by fear, but by mutual understanding. The Zra, once humanity's greatest adversaries, had agreed to collaborate on galactic security. The Zelenar shared their knowledge of peaceful coexistence, while humanity, with its indomitable spirit, would continue to contribute to the development of the galaxy in new ways. The legacy of humanity was one of duality, both warriors and peacemakers, destroyers and creators. Their path would never be simple, and they would always be a species of conflict and resolution. Yet, in the end, humanity chose to write its own story. A story not of domination, but of balance. And in this story, humanity would never be just a terrifying warrior species, but a species that proved that peace, once achieved, was the greatest victory of all. Chapter 17: The Ascension of the Collective. With the end of the summit, humanity had reached an important crossroad. The battle for the soul of the species was not over, it had only just begun. But the immediate threat of total annihilation had subsided. The galaxy, though still wary, had agreed to give humanity a chance. The question now was whether humanity could transcend its past and avoid falling back into the patterns of violence and conquest that had nearly destroyed everything. The Ascension Collective, a newly formed organization designed to oversee the transition of humanity from a warrior species to a peaceful, cooperative force in the galaxy, began to take shape. It was a coalition of diplomats, military leaders, scientists, philosophers, and members of the most influential species in the galaxy. The aim was not just to regulate peace, but to create an understanding that the galaxy's future depended on unity and shared knowledge. President Cross, now widely recognized as a leader who had held the line between destruction and survival, was appointed as the first chairperson of the Ascension Collective. She worked tirelessly to bring together not just humanity, but all the species of the galaxy, into a new paradigm. Through this collective, a series of joint technological advancements were initiated, projects aimed at improving the living conditions on previously war-torn planets, including Earth itself. However, while Cross worked toward unity, there were those who continued to resist this new world order. Old military leaders, politicians, and extremists who had long thrived on the war economy began to plot in the shadows. They saw the Ascension Collective as a threat to their power and influence, and they would do anything to see it fail. Chapter 18: The Resistance Reborn. The children of the Ancients had never truly been defeated. The faction that had once called for humanity's total dominance had simply gone underground, waiting for the right moment to strike. With the rise of the Ascension Collective, their time had come again. General Valek, though not a part of the initial power struggle, had become a symbol of the old ways. Many soldiers who had once fought for the Black Dawn and the children rallied around him. They believed humanity's true purpose was to rule, not cooperate. They saw the galaxy as a place where the strong must dominate the weak, and they were ready to fight to bring humanity back to its warrior roots. As Valek and his forces began to organize a new uprising, they turned to the remnants of humanity's ancient military technologies. They reconstructed old warships, revived forbidden research into genetic engineering and bioweapons, and reactivated old battle doctrines that had been outlawed. The children of the Ancients began to strike at weak points in the Ascension Collective's initiatives, sabotaging efforts to rebuild war-torn planets, assassinating key diplomats, and targeting the weak infrastructure of galactic cooperation. Meanwhile, the galaxy watched in fear as these new tensions began to boil over. The Zra, the Zelenar, and the other species who had once trusted humanity's promise of peace were once again in a position of uncertainty. Would humanity tear itself apart again, or would it finally overcome its darker impulses? President Cross, knowing she could not handle this growing resistance alone, turned to the very people she had once fought against: former Black Dawn generals, military tacticians, and war strategists who had now allied with the cause of peace. She knew the only way to combat the resurgence of the children was not through force, but through unity and an understanding of how to use strength without returning to the cycle of bloodshed. Chapter 19: The Battle for the Future. Cross's decision to form alliances with former military leaders of the Black Dawn wasn't a popular one, but it was a necessary one. She knew that these men and women, who had once fought for the very same ideals as the children of the Ancients, understood the cost of war better than anyone. They would help her navigate this dangerous political landscape and prevent the uprising from gaining the momentum it sought. Meanwhile, the children of the Ancients grew bolder. Their attacks against Ascension Collective projects became more frequent and destructive. Sabotage, misinformation campaigns, and targeted strikes on key planetary leaders made it clear that their ultimate goal was the complete collapse of any cooperative framework within humanity and the galaxy. Valek had one vision: re-establish humanity's place as the supreme ruler, and he would not be stopped. But as Cross and her newly formed Council of Peacekeepers worked to stifle the insurgents' efforts, something unprecedented happened. The galaxy's other species, long skeptical of humanity's true nature, began to offer their aid not out of charity, but because they saw humanity's potential to evolve. The Zra, once humanity's most bitter enemy, offered to lend their advanced military technologies to the Ascension Collective. The Zelenar, known for their unmatched diplomatic expertise, mediated peace talks between the fragmented human factions. The Kotorl, an enigmatic species known for their mental prowess, assisted in countering the children's psychological warfare. This unexpected alliance of species, once divided by centuries of conflict, realized that the only way to prevent humanity from spiraling back into chaos was to help them. In an unprecedented move, the entire galaxy rallied behind Cross's leadership. The Resistance, despite their growing strength, were no match for the united front that now stood against them. But General Valek was not one to back down. His forces, although smaller, had access to weapons humanity had never seen. He was determined to make humanity's legacy one of power, not peace. His last stand would be at the planet Nova Caris, a hub for the Ascension Collective's most important operations. Chapter 20: The Last Stand. The battle at Nova Caris would be the defining moment in humanity's journey. On the surface, it seemed like just another battle in the ongoing civil war. But in truth, it was humanity's test of whether it could overcome its violent nature, or whether it would slip back into its old ways. The children of the ancients had launched a full-scale assault on Novacaris, where Cross and her coalition had gathered their forces. The planet was surrounded by the advanced fleets of the Ascension Collective, but Valak's forces, now equipped with the most destructive weapons humanity had ever created, were not to be underestimated. As Cross led the defense of Novacaris, she understood that this battle was not just for the future of humanity, but for the entire galaxy. She called upon the members of the Ascension Collective to stand firm and support each other, as the planet became the battleground for the last remnants of humanity's warrior spirit. The fighting was brutal, and the casualties were catastrophic. However, President Cross, along with her allies in the Ascension Collective, managed to outmaneuver Valak's forces, exploiting their overconfidence and the flaws in their tactics. The final strike came not through overwhelming force, but through a carefully orchestrated series of psychological and strategic maneuvers that broke the children's will to continue the fight. General Valak, facing certain defeat, was captured. His last words were a chilling reminder of humanity's darkest past: "You may have won this battle, Cross, but you can never escape what you are. Deep inside, you are all warriors." But Cross refused to be swayed by his words. She knew humanity's journey wasn't about perfection, but about choice. The choice to evolve. The choice to learn from the past. Chapter 21: Humanity's Dawn. With the defeat of the children of the ancients, humanity was forced to confront the hard truths about itself. The scars of war, the violence that had defined their history, would always be part of who they were. But they had now proven that they could overcome it. The Ascension Collective's victory marked the dawn of a new age for humanity, one in which cooperation, not conquest, would define their place in the galaxy. President Cross's final address to the galaxy was one of hope. "We have shown that peace is not a destination but a journey that requires constant vigilance, understanding, and compassion. We are still humanity, with all our flaws, but we are stronger now than we have ever been. Not because we have conquered others, but because we have learned to conquer our own impulses." Humanity, once feared for its terrible power, had taken its first steps into an era where it would lead not through war, but through understanding. It was a long road ahead, but the galaxy had seen humanity's potential to evolve. The warriors of old were gone, and in their place stood the builders of a new future. A future of peace, one forged in the fire of conflict, but tempered by wisdom. Chapter 20: The Final Sacrifice. In the heat of the conflict, it was Cross's personal sacrifice that made all the difference. She knew that the only way to stop the children's weapon was to deactivate it manually, but it would require a full commitment of her life force to do so. With the weapon's countdown ticking, Cross made the ultimate decision. She would disable the weapon, but she would not survive the process. As the device's systems fell silent, the opposing forces stood stunned. The children of the ancients had been defeated, their final hope extinguished. But Cross's sacrifice was felt across the galaxy. A wave of emotion surged through the minds and hearts of all who had witnessed it. Humanity, at long last, had chosen the path of peace not through force, but through the courage to lay down the sword and the willingness to believe in something greater than themselves. Chapter 22: A New Beginning. The galaxy mourned Cross's death, but they also honored her memory by committing to the path of peace she had fought for. Her legacy became the foundation for the future, and the Ascension Collective was solidified as the central governing body for interspecies cooperation. The galaxy began to rebuild not through military might, but through shared knowledge, resources, and wisdom. The ancient scars of war remained, but for the first time in history, there was hope. Humanity had not only proven itself to the galaxy but had also proven something to itself. That despite all its destructive potential, it was capable of transcending its past. In the years that followed, humanity became known not for its fearsome weapons, but for its wisdom and compassion. The galaxy's most terrifying warrior species had found its true strength in its ability to change. And as the stars stretched out into the infinite expanse, the galaxy was forever changed.